Good morning, friends. Today's Friday, June 6th, and I'm excited that today I've got one of my dear friends, and I actually think of him as a mentor and somewhat of a coach. Back in 2011, I started working at Cal State Fullerton running the Center for Family Business at the business school there. And actually the first day on the job, I found myself out in North Carolina at a conference among other family business center directors. And I always laugh because I think the first agenda item of the day was talk about the successes and challenges that you've had over the past years. Well, I can, but none of them are relevant to this conversation because it was my first day on the job. But in that room, among others who have long become great friends, was this gentleman that if you're looking on YouTube or listening on the audio platforms where you can find this podcast, is this young man from Cornell University, Dan Vliet. Dan is the executive director of the Smith Family Business Initiative out at Cornell University. I know what's an Ivy Leaguer doing talking to a guy like me, and I've
Hmm.
always wondered that myself. But Dan comes to us today from somewhere on the East Coast, Cape Cod, I believe. And Dan, it's good to see you, man. Dan and I text a lot about the Dodgers, about life, about family, about just everything. And it's
Yeah.
fun to actually see you on my screen today, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ed. Thanks for having me, and it's an honor to be included in your first week of this podcast. I think it's a great format, and it is a great way to just sort of set our mental perspective in a positive direction.
No, I appreciate that, and you nailed it. That's exactly the idea. I mean, I wake up every day and I have different routines, between working out and how I eat and what I do exercise wise. But I never start a day without some sort of gratitude, whether it's through prayer or journaling or all of the above. So I'm going to just start with that. When you hear the word gratitude, what comes to mind? You can go anywhere you want with that.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about gratitude is, it's a social emotion. It's something that's really difficult to exist in a vacuum. I mean, we can be thankful for our health. We can be thankful for a beautiful day, and we can have gratitude for that as well. But the actual act of gratitude often involves, just sharing that with somebody else. Thank you for what you did, or thanks for being a friend, the way that we talk, the way that we text. Um, and I think that's what's really intriguing is that it's something that is pretty easy to
Hmm.
share,
Yeah.
right? Um, we've all been in a situation where we're sitting at a dinner table, and the host looks around the table to maybe try to get some affirmations as to how good the meal is, and then somebody at the table is like, yeah, it's okay,
Hmm.
right? And I always think in that situation, first how defeating it is for the person who just took all this time to prepare the meal, but also, like, gratitude is free. Like, it costs nothing to offer that compliment. This is great, or this is wonderful. Um, and the return on that, sort of the benefit to the relationship, is really has many downstream benefits to that. And so I think that's part of this gratitude equation is that it typically involves somebody else, and it typically has this really beneficial outcome for both, for the person that gives it as well as the person that receives it.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Excuse me, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how often we just say thank you. It's sort of like that, hey, how's your day going? Or hey, good to see you. How are you? And are we really asking the person how they are and we really want a response, or are we just saying it because it's a social norm when you see someone, hey,
Mhm.
how you doing? Thank you as well. Do we really say, and it's two words that to me are just kind of to what I'm hearing again with you is that really are powerful. You say thank you, and it softens the other person.
Mhm.
Even when you get feedback, I've been and you've been in these as well. I think I've been in these meetings with you. In fact, I think you've taught this years ago. You had us go through this hot seat exercise at one of the Family Business Center Director Alliances, and you're sitting in the chair and people are giving feedback or asking questions or what have you, and all you can say is thank you. It's kind of the process, and it's pretty powerful because when I say something to someone and they say thank you, and I feel it really is powerful for two people, the person who got the act and the person who got the thank you. So it is pretty powerful.
Mhm.
one of my previous guests, Hector Garcia, yesterday left a question for you, and I know you've heard it, but I'll ask it now anyway. Was there a time in your life or an instance in your life where kind of and I'm paraphrasing Hector's question, and I know you know it better than I do because you listened to it probably even this morning, um, where your back was against the wall, and what was the turnaround that happened? I mean, if you share as much or as little detail, it's more about the experience, about the process than the actual event. But what comes to mind for you when you think about that time in your life where there was a time when you're back against the wall and there was some sort of a turnaround, and how did that work for you?
You said we only have 10 minutes this morning, right,
Right?
Ed?
Yeah. Well, we can go a little longer. The power of editing.
Yeah, there's been a few instances where this played out, and at the time it plays out, it's not pleasant. Um, but that value of being able to look back and coming through and having a positive outcome, I think is really key. And I think back very often to a time when I was probably might have only been 15, maybe 16. So very formative time in my life. I had started my first job at a restaurant, uh, and had gotten into partying at a very early age, as many kids do. And I took the luxury of essentially stealing the keys to the family boat and going up with
Oh,
the other
wow.
people I worked with to a lake nearby where we grew up in New Jersey. You can kind of play this scene forward, and it didn't end well as we were out in the lake at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the boats collided, and
Wow.
there were probably six people, three people on each boat, and quite frankly, we're lucky nobody died. And we managed to get to shore safely, and but my boat eventually sunk, and that was tough. And not only just what had happened, but this happened with friends. Um, then having to share that with my dad.
Yeah, those are some
And
consequences that are fun.
yeah, and my dad was a tough guy. He was a Marine. And again, like at the time, there was a lot of times I'd be like, gee, I wish you'd understand, me better, Dad. But his response was, well, you need to take care of this, and that costs me a lot of money financially. Um, and this was compounded by the fact that that night, when my mother came home from work, and this is often the person you think about giving you the most amount of comfort, and my mother did do that. She leaned down and put her hand on my shoulder and informed me that her and dad were getting a divorce as well.
Oh, wow.
So,
Well, suddenly the boat disaster didn't look
yeah,
so bad.
right. So,
Yeah.
which again, it was a terrible day. Things happened after that. I ran away for a little bit, and the emotions that go through a 15-year-old's mind at that stage. Um, but I look back at that time as really key in developing a few things. One is just responsibility. You make a mess, you got to take care of it, as unpleasant as that can be. A degree of independence, and that was a tough lesson at that early in life. But some things happened after divorce that allowed me to really develop a very strong sense of independence and providing for myself. Um, and you could layer in gratitude in there, because I think often about how easily that accident could have turned fatal.
Right.
And we all hear these stories of somebody getting hit by a car, whether they're on the bike or crossing the road. And of course, especially when it's fatal, that's terrible for the individual. Couldn't be any more terrible. But I also often think about, the person who was driving the car, whether, and usually it's an accident, and think about having to carry that for your
Yeah.
life, and how that then affects you for literally forever. And so I do have a certain degree of gratitude that evening nobody was seriously hurt. And you do kind of find out who your real friends are. In the wake of that, there were some other things that happened. Um, but I'm deeply grateful that no one was hurt, that we all survived that, because, um, I think we all, experience spiraling in our life, and we often equate spiraling with sort of the gloom and doom. Like, this day that I explained here
Yeah.
had, it was a bunch of things compounded into one. And that could have spiraled into, a really bad place for me. And it's really easy to spiral. Gravity just takes over after a
Yeah.
while. Um, But then I also think about the upward spiraling that can happen. And I think this is where gratitude really comes in because, that act of saying thank you, that act of showing appreciation, more than just hollow or empty words, it has actual measured physical benefits, actual measured mental benefits for both. And that's, I think where it spirals upward. And if you can kind of keep that going, it has very, very positive consequences. And that's why, I think I admire this podcast that you're doing, because that is a way to kind of practice gratitude and to hear how others do it.
Yeah.
Some are much more maybe mindful about it, either journaling or other various activities. Others are like myself, much more like just kind of like lays there in the psyche, and it's just that sort of constant reminder to be thankful for where you are.
Yeah, I had a similar experience in high school. Probably around, well, I was a little older. I had a driver's license, and it was one of those stupid nights where I drank and got behind the wheel, and I hit a sign, not another car, but there were like five people in my car, and broke the axle of my mom's car and shattered the sign. And it's in an area right near where my parents lived until they passed a few years ago, in an area in my hometown that I drive by often. And anytime I drive by that intersection, I see it and I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, I go to shame. Can't believe I did that. But oftentimes, in the same thought, I go to gratitude that it didn't end up a whole lot worse, because it could have.
Sure.
So that experience, your boat experience, getting the news about your parents, um, I've known you 2011. I can pinpoint the day. It was June of 2011, that conference when we met. So 14 years, to this month, actually, probably
Right.
even could be to this day. Who knows? I don't know what date it was. I know it's in June, but I think that
Usually
conference
it's the
is
second
happening
June.
as you and I speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but how have you taken that pretty significant day in your life and applied it? Let's say, you have two children, both
Mm-hmm.
college age, or is she out of college yet, or is she still in college?
She's in her final year. Yeah, they're
Okay,
both
and then
in their
Rob, who's
final
in
year.
college. How have you taken those lessons and transferred those into parenting?
Well, first, I think my kids specifically, and maybe kids generally, live in a much different world than we did, right?
100%.
There was a lot of unattended time for us as children, and that's a good thing, right? It can create um, independence, it can create creativity, and it can create great friendships. The friendships that we formed on the playground, or the friendships that we formed when we would camp out at night, or whatever we did. I think kids today, and again, at least what I have experienced, it's much more structured. Um, and I always sort of have this like interesting reaction to, um, I kind of wish my kids got in a little more trouble, right? Like I wish they pushed the boundaries a little
I'll
bit.
take the boat, but yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Because I can't pinpoint like anything where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this. And I have to have like this really hard talk with either Kate or Rob. And so that's a great thing. And they've both turned out wonderfully. So I think,
yeah,
it's just sort of it's different paths to the same destination. And I've shared this story with both of them, and in the context of, it's not always as bad as it seems. Like there's a way out,
yeah,
and not to give up hope, not to give up despair, and also, to rely on those around you. I think, as I think about both my children, the thing they did best of all was they had a great social network of friends, and that means everything,
yeah,
because those are the people that are going to pull you through, thick or thin, and I still see that today.
yeah.
My
Speaking of that, it's funny you took it kind of where I wanted to go. I mentioned at the outset it's June 6th, what happens to be the birthday of my oldest brother, Steve. So happy birthday to Steve. I'll make sure I send this to him. I could do the math. He's in his 70s. I'm 60, 61. Wow. And one of my closest best friends from high school. We played high school baseball together. We've stayed very close. We touch base regularly. Jeff Peterson, one of my closest friends. And when I think of gratitude for people, I think of a lot of people, yourself included, and Damien, who's another guy that you and I would text with a lot. Um, is there that one person that you think back in your life that's just kind of been there with you through thick and thin? I know you're an outdoorsman. I know you love to hike. You spend a lot of time in the winter up in the mountains and the summer hiking and so forth. You live in a beautiful area of the world. up in the Northeast. Is there someone that you'd like to maybe, not so much shout out, but just a friend who's been there with you through life, who's gotten you through maybe that 15-year-old experience or maybe more adult experiences that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I would share somebody I've only known a relatively short period of time, and unfortunately, he passed away last year.
Sorry.
And there are many friends, trust me, that I've
Yeah.
been friends with for many years and still text with them. But there's different sort of relationships that you have with different groups of people. But this person, his name is Tony Wood. He was at RSM, which is a tax and audit firm that we work with very closely here at Cornell. Um, but one of those sort of professional colleagues that very quickly becomes a close friend. And even though my time with him was very short, I was always struck by this level of gratitude and this amount of positivity that he had around him. And this, I think, might lead to the question that I would leave for tomorrow's guest.
Yeah.
Tony had a saying, today's going to be a great day. And sounds easy to say, but when he said it, he meant it. And he demonstrated it, I think, in the way that he lived. And the number of times that just kind of echoes through my head pretty much on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're just sitting there alone and admiring the sunset, or even if it's a rainy day, I think just that mental mindset of today's going to be a great day, because what that implies to me is it doesn't involve some choices. It involves you making it a great day. And how are you going to do that? And I think that's where gratitude really is a great tool to make that happen. And Tony was great at gratitude, just for saying thank you, thanks for what you do, thanks for who you are. And so I would leave that as sort of the question for your next guest, is how are you going to make today a great day?
Hmm.
What are the choices that you're going to make that will help you spiral upward instead of spiraling downward?
I love that. All right. So we'll finish with you answering your own question. It's as we record this, it's a little after, it's approaching 10:30 in the morning on the East Coast, 7:30 here in Southern California, on the West Coast where I am. What has already made today great? Prior to this conversation, don't throw the whole podcast conversation, blah, blah. Yeah, this has been great for me too. But I mean, either prior to, because you've been up, if I know you, probably for several hours, and going forward, what's going to make today great for Dan?
Sure. Um, I don't have like as some of your other guests, a gratitude journal, or I don't write down stuff every morning. I've tried that, and it doesn't work for me. Um, but I do start the day with coffee, and we have a beautiful dog, a German Short-haired Pointer.
Nice.
And one of the things I love doing, and the dog demands that we do this, is just go outside and play fetch, right? And what I love about playing fetch with Scully is
Your
she's,
dog's name is Scully?
huh?
Your dog's name is Scully?
That's right.
That's awesome.
And it's the look of joy in her face as she plays fetch,
Yeah.
right? Like, every now and then you catch a dog smiling,
Yeah.
and I just think, like, I wish and I want to have that sort of attitude through each and every day. And it's tough to do because, we all have sort of our own, kind of ups and downs throughout the day, but like, she just is doing the things she loves to do. And in what I do in my professional work, similar to what you do, we get to engage with great people.
Yeah.
And what I think is really special, especially in the family business space, is that we get to engage with people at a very personal level. And that, I think, is a really rare gift, because you and I have both been in contact with many people who we would consider great leaders, entrepreneurs, creative thinkers, and they've given us access to that. And when we can do something for those individuals, whether it's the business owner, whether it's their children or other members in the family, and we have some level of positive impact on their family, right? Because that's really the work that we do. Very few of us really work with them on their business. It's really more the work that we do with them on their families. Um, and to think, like I just had that little tiny bit of impact in them that
Yeah.
hopefully downstream is going to have benefits going forward. And I'm very just thankful for the position that I've been fortunate enough to have for almost 25 years now. This is not a career or a pathway that I had ever anticipated. but it has sort of revealed itself to me as I've progressed through it. Um, and uh, and even though not every day is, you don't finish every day with a smile on your face, I'm thankful for the opportunities I have here, and I'm thankful for the great work that we've been able to accomplish with students, with business owners, or with anyone in our personal or private networks.
Well, Dan, I appreciate your time this morning, taking time out of your Friday to spend it with me. Obviously, the gratitude I have for you is immense, for what you've taught me in that family business space. You've been doing it a lot longer than I have. And you've always been looked at by our peer group as an expert in this. And so I appreciate that. I know that there are, because I know many of them, there are a lot of leaders and a lot of families that have been influenced by your efforts and your expertise, and a lot of other counterparts of ours who work in the same space that you and I do. So I appreciate your time today. I feel a tremendous amount of gratitude for you and for our friendship. And we're 3,000 miles away, but Dan and I share a love for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I think my love is a little stronger than his, because I'm forever the optimist. Once he makes an error, it's like, yeah, what an effort. Once he makes an error, and Dan's like,
Trade
we got
him.
to trade the bum.
And he'd be a much better general manager than me. There's no
I
doubt.
don't know about that. I think you'd probably have a better team, because I'd be like, I see potential in everyone, even to a fault. And
I'm probably more of the Steinbrenner model.
there you go. That's right. Well, Dan, thank you for the time. I'm going to pass that question on tomorrow to my guest. And yeah, just I encourage everyone listening. This is the From the Heart podcast. It's presented by Orange Kiwi Consulting, one of my great clients and friends out here that's really helps family businesses and leaders through transition. And we talk about transitions a lot on this podcast and just in daily conversations. Everyone's in some sort of transition, whether it's you're selling a business or transitioning in your career or transitioning in anything. I think life is one big transition, and the gratitude. I know Dan spends a lot of time outdoors. He sends me pictures, and I hear a lot about your hiking and your long journeys outside, and I admire that. And I think that's one way that you express gratitude. I think that don't sell yourself short. You may not journal, and you may not do these other things that some do, but just that love that you have for nature that inspires me. I wish I had that. I mean, I love nature, but you take it to a level that I never will. And I think that's your way of expressing gratitude to your creator or whatever placed you here. So appreciate your time, my good friend, and just passing that question on to my next guest. So you get the last word. My guests always get the last word. Anything just come to mind for you that you want to share as we wrap up?
Well, hey, today's going to be a great day. Love you, brother. Thanks for having me on.